The Portfolio Composer, episode 197.
You're listening to the Portfolio Composer podcast with your host and coach, Garrett Hope, where he teaches you what it takes to master the business end of writing music through mindset, marketing, and business skills. Make sure to sign up for the newsletter at theportfoliocomposer.com for exclusive offers, business insights, and information not shared on the podcast. And now, for this episode of the Portfolio Composer.
You can never get complacent, and that means you can never stop going out and making new relationships and working with new directors. You just can't sort of sit back and rest on your laurels.
This episode is brought to you by Dorico, the music notation software from Steinberg. Just released, Dorico Pro 2 is a major new version, including features for musicians working in film and TV music and in jazz, rock, and pop. Steinberg have also released Dorico Elements, a new entry-level application that packs all of the essential power of Dorico Pro into a simple, streamlined package that is ideal for those getting started. Find out more later in the show. Calling all young composers. The Philadelphia Youth Orchestra wants to hear your original scores for their third annual Young Composer Competition. The grand prize winner receives $2,000, private coaching, and a performance of their music by the Philadelphia Youth Orchestra at the Kimmel Center for the Performing Arts in Philadelphia. Visit pyos.org to apply. Find out more info later in the show. Hello and welcome to this episode of the Portfolio Composer. I am your host, your coach, your teacher, Garrett Hope, and I'm so excited that you're joining us. This episode is a really fun one. This is with James Edward Barker. He's an award-winning British composer and music producer. Influenced by an eclectic mix of genres, he has composed for almost every facet of music. He is a multi-instrumentalist performing mainly as a guitarist, but also on percussion, piano, and vocals. And he's worked with a whole variety of alternative instruments from all around the world. And I absolutely love this interview and the story of how he met Charlize Theron at South by Southwest is totally worth the time it takes to listen to this interview. So I hope you get a lot out of it. There are some real gems here. The Chicago live events are almost upon us. When this episode gets released, they're only going to be about a week and a half away. Be sure to go to theportfoliocomposer.com, get on the mailing list, and get your tickets. You won't want to miss this. The live interview for episode 200 with Stacey Garrett is going to feature performances of her music by the Gaudete Brass Quintet, and the tuba player from that quintet, Scott Teggy, has been on the podcast before. Incredible performers, great humans, and there's going to be a premiere performance of the new piano and viola version of Stacey's Viola Concerto Krakatoa that she wrote for Michael Hall, and Michael Hall will be performing this at the live event. This is really going to be a tremendous time. So go to theportfoliocomposer.com, get on the mailing list, and then get your tickets for the events. You don't want to miss it. Enjoy.
I don't know where that is.
So do you know where...
Okay, fair enough.
Can you picture Minneapolis and St. Paul?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm about 7.5 hours east of Denver.
Okay.
Right in the middle of the country.
Which is crazy, because if you traveled 7.5 hours from one end of my country, you'd end up in the sea.
Wouldn't you? Yeah.
You tried to, because you would literally cover the whole of it.
The whole thing. The drive to Denver from here is literally all plains. It's almost entirely flat, and it's just full of cornfields and cows and grass.
Okay.
Isn't it crazy?
Very good.
So
it is crazy.
Where in England are you right now?
So if you're looking at London, I am about 45 minutes southeast, I'm in a very small village called West Malling, but I'm near a big town called Maidstone, which is actually where I was born, but I had it sort of ended up as a happy accident. I ended up back near the place where I was born. I never planned to end up living sort of around here, but my wife's folks are nearby, so yeah, it all worked out quite nicely.
Oh, that's good. Did you expect to be in London then? Is that the main hub of media composing in England?
Yeah, I mean, I was there for. Well, I ended up in university in Newcastle, which I loved, and then I was in a couple of bands. So I hung around there for a while. I was probably in Newcastle for maybe even like 5, 6 years, and my wife got a job in London. So then I moved down here, which to London, which I used as a base for a bit. But I was touring a lot, so I sort of go away for 3 weeks, come back for a week, go away for 3 weeks. And then we ended up living in Brixton for about nine years, which was great. And if you're starting out, you need to be in that place, for all the networking. And I still need to go up to network, every now and again. It was a very important part of the beginnings of my film composing, definitely. That and jumping across to LA every now and again to fly the flag there.
Yeah, I'm sure you make that flight quite a bit.
Yeah. Well, I can afford it a bit more to come a bit more frequently than I used to be able to. But I remember my first trip was kind of harrowing. I didn't realize on my first trip, it was back in 2006, and I didn't realize you had to have a car, so I didn't even hire a car. And I got there. I got a cab from the airport to West Hollywood, and I was staying in, I think it was called the Banana Bungalows or something there, which at the time was quite a famous hostel. And I was sharing a room with like 5 people, and it just wasn't what I expected. I thought I was going to get my own room and stuff. And then all my meetings I'd arranged around West Hollywood, and I ended up walking to every meeting. And I thought, I didn't know how to dress, so I dressed quite smart in a shirt and, tucked into my jeans and everything, smart shoes. And I ended up walking miles and miles a day and had to sort of towel myself down before every meeting because I was so hot and sweaty.
What time of year was that?
It was end of March, beginning of April, because I had started off my tour in South by Southwest. I just threw myself into it and went there and had a great time and met lots of really cool people who then I was able to follow up with when I got to LA, like lots of really cool music supervisors. And I met Doreen Ringer-Ross from BMI there, so that was great. It was a really cool trip, but I just hadn't planned my LA trip very well because I was just completely naive of it. So next time, I definitely hired a car.
It's a big city.
Yeah.
But you kind of like opened like 5 doors for me to walk through here in this little like minute we've been talking.
Okay.
So you said you went to LA after doing your tour. So let's start with the tour.
Yeah.
Okay. Tell me about the tour.
I was just joking. It wasn't really a tour. It was just me going to South by Southwest, like just trying to hold my hand out in as many places as possible, going, "Hey, does anyone need a composer?" But I guess it was a little mini tour in itself because there were so many bars there, and anyone who's ever been to South by Southwest literally just tours around that little main street there. Yeah, it was an eye opener, and it was great fun. So yeah, that was all I meant by the tour. I was kind of joking.
I get it. Now, this is interesting because you're the first composer I've spoken with who launched their career by going to South by. And that's a big place for the kind of pop and rock world and indie and, some of that stuff. But kind of in the Tim Ferriss way, who also launched his career at South by Southwest. What did that do for you, and how did you maximize that opportunity?
So, I mean, you're very focused on the bands rather than film composing. And at the time I didn't know that. It was a little festival starting out. I had been to Cannes the year before, and then I'd been to Berlin that February. And I just heard a few people whispering about this really cool sort of relatively new festival called South by Southwest. And I just thought, well, I've never been to that area of America, and it sounds awesome. And yeah, so I got there, and I was really ill as soon as I got there because I suffer from hay fever, and there's some weird type of, I can't remember what it is now. There was a weird type of tree there that I hadn't anticipated, and as soon as I got off the plane, I was literally in pieces, and I had to go to the pharmacy and everything, sort myself out. But that took like 2 or 3 days, so that wasn't the best start. And then, and then literally, I just went to every single conference that I could get into, panel, whatever you call it, and fun enough, the year before, I'd done a film called The Best Man, which then got changed to the title Unhitched, and it starred Stuart Townsend. And Stuart was, I think, married or at least living with Charlize Theron at the time. She was also best friends with the director of that film, Stephen Schwartz. I went to a panel and I had no idea, but Charlize Theron was on the panel. As she was walking out, everyone was like trying to lynch her, like going, Charlize, sign this. And I wrote a little note saying, hey, Charlize, my name's James. You know, I've just done a film for Stefan, and it'd be awesome to sort of meet up with you sort of later on. And I scrumpled this note up, and as she was walking past, I dived past her bodyguards and just put it in her hand. And then they obviously thought I was some psycho, so she got whisked away. And then later that day, her film, she was producing a film. I can't remember what it was. I mean, I don't know whether you can IMDb it quickly, but it was back in 2006, and she was producing this film, and it was showing that night. And I managed to get in. And as I was going in, she was put in this special sort of box, sort of high up there. And I sort of climbed up the side. And I said, hey, Charlize, did you get my note? She goes, oh, you James? And I was like, yeah. And at this point, the security guards are coming for me again. And she was like, no, it's fine. Let James in. So I went in and I sat next to her and I had this really cool chat with her. And so that was like the beginning of myself. So I was like, okay, you just got to blag whatever you can blag.
Wow.
And yeah, she was really cool. And yeah, and I think that's when I started to realize you've just got to sort of try and maximize any and every opportunity to try and get a foot in the door. As much as that didn't actually explicitly lead to anything in particular, you know, she was really cool with me. I had a really good time with her. I think she told me to go to a party, which I went to, and then I met so-and-so person, and you know what it's like. And then, you know, I met a music supervisor who was then hanging out with 10 of his pals who were music supervisors. And then I got introduced to Doreen Ringeroth. And then when I got to LA, Doreen, I managed to get a meeting with Doreen. She was like, who's your favorite composer of all time? And at that point it was Christopher Young. And lo and behold, 3 days later, I'm sitting in Christopher Young's studio having a meeting with him. And so it was quite exhausting, but it was just blag. And that's how I managed to sort of get started. And I ended up, through a number of people, having a meeting with a guy called Matt Birch at Endgame, who to this day is you know, one of my best mates in the world outside of the industry as well. But he ended up recently being my agent as well, which is quite funny. He was working at Endgame and he got me a job, and the rest is history, really.
Wow. Now, okay, so that's an incredible story, and you had quite the chutzpah to climb up to Charlize Theron's box in the premiere of her film. But most composers don't have that in their back pocket. They can't write her a note and say, hey, we have this connection. So, I mean, it seems
which
like
was so tenuous.
Right. Like you just happen to know someone that she knows, right? So how else would you have done it?
Yeah, exactly. How else would I have done it?
Yeah, I mean, like, let's say you didn't. If that connection hadn't have happened, would South by have been as fruitful for you?
Yeah, sure. To be honest, I've really wanted to go to South by every year since, because I loved it. But I know it's gotten, it's huge now. It's a huge thing. It's one of the festivals on the map in terms of, you know, they got their digital section, haven't they? Sorry, interactive section. They've got their film section. They've got the music section now, and they all sort of slightly overlap. But it's a huge event, you know, on the calendar. I mean, even if it was just based for music bands, you know, someone knows someone who knows someone, and it's all about it's about being in the right place at the right time. But if you don't put yourself out there, then you're never going to get in the right place at the right time. And there are going to be some days that fail completely, where you're probably going to have 3 meals in a day on your own and, you know, a couple of drinks, but the next day is going to be different. And I think, you know, whether I had climbed up that box or not, I think it would have been very fruitful. Yeah, because it's full of people networking, and Americans are very friendly. I find sometimes, British people are a bit standoffish.
Okay, you're not.
Yeah, I know. I'm not. But I found that, I found that going to America, people were a lot more interested in just having that initial chat. Like, if I didn't really have much to offer, I probably wouldn't have got the second meeting. But I found with American companies as well, I cold called so many American companies, and I found that they were willing to take that one meeting. Do you know what I mean? And then in that meeting, hopefully you get along, and then they're like, oh, you should meet with my mate Bob, who makes films about sharks, and you love sharks. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's there was that opportunity, but I felt with a lot of British companies, I was cold calling them, and they were like, well, have you made an appointment, and how do you know us? And no, we're okay, thanks. You know what I mean?
You probably need an introduction or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so I want to follow up on some things you've said here, James. So I loved what you said, that you have to put yourself out there. And you did that by attending film festivals and South by and putting your money on the line. Like, you bought a ticket to LA, it costs money. And there was no guaranteed return, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's an important lesson here for composers, that things don't just happen. Well, and then you followed up with making cold calls, and Americans are willing, for the most part, to have that first conversation. But then the burden falls on you to sell yourself. So what did you do to say, I'm really the guy, you want to work with me? What were some of the things you said, or some of the actions you took?
I found that I wanted to get to know people. Because I think I learned pretty early on, or at least got the feeling of pretty early on, that, it's not like it is in the movies. You can't just walk in a room and say, I am the best guy you're ever going to meet, you have to hire me. Because really, at that point in time, I'd done a film that I thought was going to get a big release in America, and it hadn't. It had kind of gone straight to DVD. And then, my second film was a fairly obscure German film. So when I got that, I didn't have that hit to go, that's what I've done, you need me. So really, I took the approach that I just want to get to know this person. And, you get to know the sort of things that they want to do and what they don't want to do. And then, and if you just get on with someone, they might, you could follow up and say, so what I do is I get to know them, and I'd IMDb the hell out of them. And then after the meeting, after we'd had, hopefully a good meeting, after, 30 minutes or 40 minutes, I would then email them and say, by the way, I know you're doing this project. Have you got a composer for this project? Or I'd maybe try and subtly steer the meeting, so eventually we would end up talking about that project, and I'd be like, oh, is there a composer on board? Do you know what I mean? And just do it a bit more subtly, because I think, it's going to take time. And, some people, over time, even on my 7th or 8th trip, nothing had come of them so explicitly, like it, but it's relationships that build over time. And I think that's what's really important. And I just made the point of, after every film that I managed to get, of just putting a big sort of part of that money that I earned aside for travel. And I picked my places. For me, it was always, I want to get work out of America. I like, I get on with them. I seem to get on with Americans. I like the way they work. I had grown up in a town and a situation, and London, to a point where, you go to a dinner party, or you go to a party, whatever, and you can guarantee that you're probably going to be the only person in that room who is in film, and everyone looks at you like, is that a proper job? Whereas I found, I was in LA and everyone was in film. I wasn't the outsider anymore. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, we were able, I was being taken seriously. No one gave me that weird look. Everyone was like, oh, cool. Yeah, so am I. So is this guy. Do you know what I mean? And I was like, oh my God, this is brilliant. Like, now I can put all that aside and just start, making this happen. And that's what that's what I loved about it, and that's sort of how I made my inroads as such.
It really all comes down to having relationships.
Yeah, totally. 100%.
Today's sponsor is the Philadelphia Youth Orchestra's third annual Young Composer Competition. The winner of this competition will have their music performed live by the Philadelphia Youth Orchestra at the Kimmel Center for the Performing Arts in June 2019, under the direction of Maestro Louis Scaglione. The winning composer will be awarded $2,000, the opportunity to work with PYO and Curtis Institute of Music alumni, Sheridan Seyfried, and a professional recording of their score. The second place winner will have the opportunity to discuss his or her score with Mr. Seyfried and will also receive a cash prize of $1,000. The third place winner will receive a cash prize of $500. To enter this no application fee competition, the young composer must be a U.S. citizen or currently enrolled in an American music school and be born between September 1994 and September 2000. The application deadline is November 21st. Visit pyos.org for more specifics about the competition on their homepage. This episode is sponsored by Dorico, the future of scoring. And we want to feature real Dorico users so you can know that real composers out in the world today are using Dorico to make their careers happen.
My name is Reginald Unterzehr. I am a composer, conductor, voice teacher, musician of a variety of sorts. It does absolutely everything I need. Plus, every time a new feature is released, it does it with depth and clarity that I have never seen in any programs to date. Right now, I think my favorite, I'm just finally figuring out the idea of flows. I'm deep into a multi-movement choral orchestral soloist project. And so there are certain aspects of that I had not explored at all and didn't really need. And now that I see how they work, it's going to be a tremendous help when I get into the rehearsal and distribution of scores phase and revisions phase. It just makes the way that flows are set up makes it a single document that works for all the different movements of it, and I'm loving that. The number one benefit is the fact that I believe this program has legs, that there's going to be updates that come out regularly. The team that runs it is a reliable, solid team. The people who own it are responsible and have a commitment to the musical community. This was my big problem with the platform that I left. It was like, this platform has been abandoned and I do not want to spend another cent on it. I definitely recommend Dorico. My number one thing is that it actually presents a path forward as my work continues. I am 62 years old. Learning a new program is daunting. I really like the way that the scores look. They just seem very natural. The spacings work so much better. The way that choral scores work now, the way that it works with lyrics, the way that it works with layouts. I went back to I was with a choir doing a piece that I had put together in another program 8-10 years ago. And they were asking me all kinds of questions about what is this note and what is that? Is that a tie? Is that a slur? Is that a this thing? And I was looking back at it and I was going, oh, yeah, they really fixed that problem, didn't they? Because I don't get those questions with Dorico. People look at the notes and they play the notes or sing the notes and it makes sense. They don't have to figure out what the program meant by it. I run into problems in rehearsals oftentimes when tracking the eye across the page confuses them rhythmically. And I have not had that problem at all with Dorico. Again, it seems to be, it gets out of the way of the interface between composers' intentions and musicians' reading. Rather than introducing barriers, it removes barriers, and I like that a lot.
The kind folks at Dorico have set up a special web page so you can go and download a free 30-day trial copy of Dorico. So go and do that. Have been using the program and I'm absolutely in love with it. Go to dorico.com/TPC. Of all the people you've met that you've tried to build a relationship with, what percentage do you think have led to work? And the reason I ask is because this show, the idea of building relationships comes up all the time. We are in a relationship business.
Yeah.
But I don't want to convey the impression that you go out and you get to know these music supervisors and producers and directors, and for every 10 people you meet, you're going to get 8 projects.
Yeah.
Could you estimate kind of where that is? And I know it takes a long time, right? Like someone you met 10 years ago might give you a project now because you have a long relationship, but
Yeah.
surely it's not a one-to-one correlation.
Yeah, no, totally. It's not. And you know, because also you have people who might have put you forward for something and then, you know, you just don't get on with the director. Do you know what I mean? And or it just doesn't work out because the producer, you know, you might be put forward and the director wants you, and then suddenly the producer needs new money, and the guy who's coming in with the money says, "You must use my son." Do you know what I mean? Like, I've been booted off projects for that before.
Have you really?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely not a one-to-one conversion. I wouldn't be on my 30th film or whatever if I hadn't have gone out and met hundreds of people. You know, if it was a one-to-one conversion, then it would just be the easiest place in the world, and you know, I'd probably have enough money to retire right not that I want to, but it would be an option.
Sure.
Yeah, so it's not one-to-one. I don't know. I couldn't say. It's too hard because does it count if I meet Joe, who introduces me to Michael, who introduces me to Stephanie, who introduces me to Travis? Do you know what I mean? Like,
oh yeah,
so then that's really hard to then work out the maths of how that's will work. What I would say is that if you put yourself out there enough times and you have something to be able to back it up with, you know, even if you have 20% of the talent that you're selling yourself as having, then it's going to happen at some point. You're going to get a job, and then it's down to you. You know, you're going to need to show something off at some point. And I've been in very lucky position of working with people who I've got on with, and it's come together when it's come together. So I've managed to get the next job and then the next job.
Yeah, congratulations, man. That's wonderful. That's the hard part.
Yeah, but it doesn't really. There are relationships that happen, and then, you know, you hopefully end up doing every film with that person. But there's, even when you think, you know, you've done a film, like 3 or 4 films for one person, there's still going to be a situation where you think that you will be getting their next film, but then maybe something has happened. You know, like what I was just saying about a financier coming in and saying, no, you got to use this guy or my son or something, or the producers have already lined up everything and the director's just coming in as a replacement. So you can never get complacent, and that means, you know, you can never stop going out and making new relationships and working with new directors. You know, I'm just finishing a film right now with the you know, people who I've really never worked with before, and you know, it's great. I found, you know, a great new producer and an amazing new director, and you know, you just can't sort of sit back and rest on your laurels. I mean, obviously, if you have a big hit where it makes a lot of money at the box office, and then it all starts rolling in, you could probably become a bit more complacent. But you know, I've been very much in the indie film world, and it's fun actually. Like, I know I was talking about cold calling a lot of people, but I think the one area where I did find it hard to cold call to get any sort of response is the studio world. You know, I've been very much come up the ranks in the independent world. I still haven't had a studio film as such, and I think that has been one area that is harder to crack. I think because they have their own sort of group of people as such who they like to use, who they can also afford to use. So yeah.
I want to follow up on your never be complacent comment.
Yeah.
So I imagine, like, when you get a project, you just want to like hole up and work on that project, and you probably have time constraints. But you just said that or the way I was picturing it is you have to constantly be putting more work in the pipeline. So when you finish one project, you can move on to the next, or there's no money coming in.
Yeah.
So how do you divide your time then? Like, are you Are you writing 100% of your time when you've got a project, or do you leave some portion of the time to continue to go to festivals, conferences, make calls? I mean, how does that balance for you?
Yeah, I think like only because of the nature of film composing, as in it's a very quick turnaround. I only go to festivals or travel outside of a film. There's small gaps between, and there are some festivals that, just because of the way that they are in the calendar year, are very hard to get to. So, for example, South by Southwest has been really hard to get to because almost every year I've been doing a film then, because that's the time when everyone wants to get their film ready for Cannes. And obviously, you know, the composing is the last in line just before the sound mix. And usually the sound mix is happening, you know, sort of at the end of the first week of April. And then they're like rushing like hell to get the film down at Cannes, the physical film down there so they can show it. So I am sort of busting my gut from probably the end of January to the end of March. So that's why it's been hard to get to, and that's why Sundance has been really hard to get to. Yeah, Venice would probably be quite an easy one. I seem to find August normally quite a dry month. Cannes is normally good because everyone's normally finished like for Cannes. But yeah, Sundance, Berlin, South by Southwest, Toronto as well. It's hard. And I don't know quite, like what you're saying about the next job. It's funny working with, you know, self-employed people in the independent sector in the film world. You know, it's funny, you know, you get a job and you've been worrying about getting a job, and then you get a job, and then you think, oh, you're going to be really, like, you're going to be able to be slightly complacent or slightly happy for a bit. But whilst you're sort of tinkering away on that job, you're thinking, oh my God, when's my next job? It's like this vicious cycle of never being happy.
Right.
It's probably because, you know, there aren't millions and millions and millions of dollars to be earned in the, you know, as being self-employed in the independent world. But but it keeps you on your toes. Like, I don't know how I divide my time. Like, probably, I mean, I know, like, during the end of a job, you know, I am doing those last bits of notes for the director whilst I'm trying to say, stop, we can't do any more notes because I'm trying to orchestrate, because then I have to record, and then I have to edit, and then I have to mix. And those weeks are so full on that I don't even know my name anymore, and my wife doesn't recognize me. But the first few weeks, you know, whilst you're like still trying to work out and write, you know, and get this sort of steam train going, those are the times where you can spend, you know, a little bit of time probably checking out IMDb or talking to your agent or whatever. But yeah, in the last few weeks, it's not possible. You have no life whatsoever.
Wow. I like to ask this question of people who are on the podcast, and so I'm going to throw it at you.
Yeah.
What's one action that the composers who are listening today could take to move their career forward?
It's probably just keep building relationships. Like, and it's a hard balance between wanting to spend, you know, I know composers who between jobs just spend all their time honing their skill, which is amazing because their skill is probably way beyond my skill at that point. Do you know what I mean? I think putting yourself out there and researching as well. Like, it's taken me a long time to work out who I am composing wise, like what my skills are. Like, I've tried almost every facet. I would love to try sci-fi. If anyone's listening to this, you need a sci-fi composer, I'm here. But quick sell.
Yeah.
But I've worked out that my strengths are like composing for something that has a strong emotional arc or something that's slightly more left field. I've had the benefit of working in most genres, so I've been able to work that out. But try and work that out, you know, as you go. Like, have that in the back of your mind. Like, where do I want to end up working? And, you know, in the beginning for a long time, I was like, oh, I want to work in anything and everything, because, you know, I guess you want to try out everything. But it's okay not to be great in every single sort of facet of writing music. And it took me a long time to work that out, probably because of like insecurities and stuff. I don't know. But I think it was who's the actor who's the artist in Shape of the Water? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Who's friends with Sally Hawkins? Anyway, that actor, he was being interviewed at the Oscars, and they said to him, "What's the one piece of advice you would give to anyone?" And he said to realize early on as an actor that there's a place for everyone. And I thought it was a really good advice, because find your space and make it your own. And there is a space for everyone. And it might not seem it in the beginning, and it might be a really long journey, but I think you'll get there. And just put yourself out there enough times, and it'll happen.
It's brilliant. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about today that I haven't asked you?
No, I think we've had a really good chat.
It's been brilliant.
Yeah, thank you, Garrett. It's been a good chat. You sound exactly like one of my best friends in the States, so it made it a lot easier to talk to you, actually.
Oh, nice. So I have a voice doppelganger. Perfect.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I look forward to meeting you in person sometime, and I appreciate you being so willing to share your thoughts with us today, so thank you.
Cheers, Garrett. Thank you very much.
This episode is brought to you by Dorico, the music notation software from Steinberg. The brand new Dorico Pro 2 introduces best-in-class support for composing to picture. Using the same powerful new video engine found in Cubase and Nuendo, attach a video to your project. Play it back via the dedicated video window and see thumbnails in play mode. Add markers at crucial points in the action and display them in the score. Use the new tempo automation controls in play mode to line markers up with beats, or find a tempo for the whole cue. New tools in play mode allow you to edit the tempo and dynamics of your music graphically, applying default curves to provide more nuance to gradual tempo and dynamic changes. Add lanes for MIDI controllers and draw data to bring your music to life. With Dorico 2's new automation tools, you can add realism and nuance to the virtual performance of your music, taking it one step closer to the stage or concert hall without leaving your music notation software. And that's only the beginning. Check out the brand new Dorico website at dorico.com/TPC to find out more.